Seeing the service rendered by Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami also desired to be able to render similar service, such as the best Lord. In answer to his prayers, one of his Shalagram Shilas, a Damodar Shila, manifested himself as a beautiful Radha Raman deity. So, 100 litres of milk, another item. Overlook Radha Ramandev because he was very small in size. They were correct, and the Muslims never destroyed the original deity. Curiously, there is no deity of Srimati Radharani in the temple, but at Radharaman's left side there is a small silver crown presence. Gopinath Pujari, a dear disciple of Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, was serving as the Radharaman a lifelong celibate. The line of Radharaman's servants from this family is still continuing unbroken. Shri Radharaman Dev Ji Ki. Beginning from Madhvacharya down to the spiritual master Madhavendra Puri, the Acharya named Lakshmipati, there was no realization of devotional service and conjugal love. Sri Madhavendra Puri introduced the conception of conjugal love in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya. In the temple of Shri Rajnath, Lord Chaitanya narrated the story of Madhavendra Puri, having heard it from Ishwara Puri. Once Sri Madhavendra Puri travelled to Vrindavan, where he came upon the hill known as Govardhan. While he was sitting beneath a tree, an unknown cowherd boy came to Puri, smiling, addressed him. Madhavendra Puri became very satisfied, hearing his sweet for him, and at the end of the night he saw a dream in which the boy declared, "The priest hid me." And all other eatables, and they prepared a huge feast to offer to Gopal. Madhavendra Puri stayed in the village for some time and worshipped the Lord. Then one night he saw another dream. Gopal asked him to go to Jagannath Puri, sandalwood and camphor, because his body has still not cooled down after staying in the bushes for so long. Madhavendra Puri left the next morning, and when he arrived, his devotees did and here from Madhavendra. The Gopis obtained the sandalwood and cream in Ramuna. Gopalaji appeared and told him that he and Gopinath are non-different. So Madhavendra Puri should stay in Ramuna and have all sandalwood. This will cool the body of Lord Gopal as well. The original Gopal deity, presently known as Sri Nataji, is now worshipped in Natadwar, Rajasthan. At the time of his passing away, Madhavendra Puri constantly chanted the following verse, feeling intense separation from Krishna. This verse is very special. Lord Chaitanya describes it as the crown jewel of all verses regarding bhakti. Something like this is right. Hidayam Twadalokakataram Daita Brahmyati Kim Karakaham. O compassionate Lord of the poor and humble, O Lord of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Without seeing you, my heart has become very much afflicted. O my beloved, I am overwhelmed. What shall I do now? Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that this verse is the most valuable in the entire treasury of Rasa poetry. Actually, this verse was spoken by Srimati Radharani herself, and her mercy brought this same verse from the mouth of Madhavendra Puri. In Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu's mood of separation begins with this single verse spoken by Madhavendra Puri, his Param Guru. Jai Shri Vaishnav Thakur's Ki. Brief reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. New York City, July 9th, 1976. Jayananda was driving the car. Tamal Krishna Goswami and Rameshwar Swami were also there. They had picked up Srila Prabhupada and Hari Sori at LaGuardia Airport, and they proceeded nicely towards Manhattan. Prabhupada asked, "Are things going on here nicely?" Tamal Krishna replied that everything had really just begun. The devotees were still moving into the 12-story building in Manhattan and were making the final arrangements for Ratha Yatra. "You will see all of the work is just in progress," he said. "Yes," said Srila Prabhupada, "manage nicely. Krishna is giving us everything. There is no scarcity. If we simply sincerely work, Krishna will give us the intelligence, everything. By his mercy, everything is available. That is Krishna. He can give you anything." As the car approached the colossal Brooklyn Bridge, Srila Prabhupada inquired, "That is Brooklyn Bridge, I think. Sometimes I was coming here and sitting down near the bridge." "Near the water?" asked Tamal Krishna. They were fascinated to hear Srila Prabhupada's early activities alone in New York. "You were sitting near the water?" "Yes, that river," said Prabhupada. Because I was on the Bowery Street, it is not very far away. So I was coming, walking there, and sitting under that bridge and thinking, when shall I return to India? He laughed. He asked about the other places, almost like inquiring about old friends, the Fulton Street subway station and Chamber Street. Srila Prabhupada ki. Ishan Prabhu, can I make one request? Just outside, I've got this a little sheet of paper. I've got some notes on, but Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 18, entitled Diti Vows to Kill King Indra. And it's text 26. Ashasanasya tasyedam. Asasanasya tasyedam. Dhruvamunada cetasa. Madashoshaka indrasya. Bhuyadyena suto hime. Asasanasya tasedam. Dhruvamunada cetasa. Madashushaka indrasya. Bhuyadyeno suto hime. Asasanasya tasedam. Dhruvamunada cetasa. Madashushaka indrasya. Bhuyadyena suto hime. Please chant. Asasanasya tasedam. Dhruvamunada cetasa. Madashushaka indrasya. Bhuyadyena suto hime. Asanasya tasedam. Dhruvamunada cetasa. Madashushaka indrasya. Bhuyadyena suto hime. Asanasya tasedam. Dhruvamunada cetasa. Madashushaka indrasya. Bhuyadyena suto hime. Asasanasya, thinking. Tasya, of him. Idam, this body. Dhruvam, eternal. Unadachetasaha, whose mind is unrestrained. Marasho Shakaha, who can remove the madness? Indrasya, of Indra. Bhuyat, may there be. Yena, by which? Sutaha, a son. He, certainly. Me, of me. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Diti thought, Indra considers his body eternal, and thus he has become unrestrained. I therefore wish to have a son who can remove Indra's madness. Let me adopt some means to help. Let me adopt some means to help me in this. Please repeat. Diti thought, Indra considers his body eternal, and thus he has become unrestrained. I therefore wish to have a son who can remove Indra's madness. Let me adopt some means to help me in this. Purport. One who is in the bodily conception of life is compared in the Shastras to animals like cows and asses. Diti wanted to punish Indra, who had become like a lower animal. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutare Swayam Rupa Gramayam Dadanti Swaparantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Utapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijina Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamshta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priya Chakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyanevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Again, I humbly seek your blessings that I may be able to speak something that is pleasing to Prabhupada. Yeah, Bhagavatam, it gives great insights into the psychology of conditioned souls. Because once we understand how the mind is functioning, then we can also learn better how to deal with it. So it's very interesting here. Diti, of course, we have to understand she's an exalted personality. She's a daughter of Lord Brahma. She's married to a great sage, but nonetheless, at least for the sake of this pastime, she'd be very much covered over by material desires, etc. Because previously we've seen that because of the desire of Lord Indra, then Lord Vishnu, he killed the two brothers, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And therefore Diti is very much blaming Lord Indra for the death of her sons. And this is a very interesting thing, because when one is too much in the bodily conception of life, as Prabhupada is talking here, then they're like animals, like cows and asses. They lose their sense of discrimination. We all have intelligence, but when the senses become too strong, then it can distort our intelligence. This is very interesting. We know in the pastime where Diti, she engaged in sexual activity with Kashyapa Muni. She entices him to engage in this activity at a very inauspicious time. After this happens, she's very, very regretful and very remorseful, and she's asking Kashyapa Muni to pray to Lord Shiva for her, to sort of ask for forgiveness, because she can see that what she's done is that she's been overcome by, her lusty desires, etc., and has caused this sinful situation to manifest. So she's very regretful, and so they offer these prayers to Lord Shiva through Kashyapa Muni, and get the benediction that, okay, you'll give birth to demons, but you'll get two benedictions, just to comfort her, because she's a devotee. She'll get two benedictions. Number one, your sons, they will be killed by the personality of Godhead. Your sons will be killed by Lord Vishnu, and also a very great devotee will take birth in the amongst your descendants. Now, that great devotee, of course, is Prahlad Maharaj, who is described in some places as the topmost devotee. And of course, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, her two sons, they were killed, as we heard yesterday, by Lord Nrsingadev and Lord Varaha, respectively. And Diti, she was exalted enough to realize that having your sons killed by the personality of Godhead is actually a great benediction. So she was satisfied by this initially. She was satisfied. Okay, she said, okay, I acted, out of sinful desires. I've acted to create a situation which wasn't so favorable, but nonetheless, the Lord is very merciful, and if we're going to accept what happens. But then we see that the bodily concept is so strong that although we have some realization at some point in life, this then gets covered over by material desires, because after her sons are killed, then she becomes very, very resentful towards Lord Indra. But this is a very, very interesting thing. We see her mentality here. She's not thinking, okay, I've made some sinful desire, or I've had these children at an inauspicious time. It's my fault. But what she's thinking is that these children are hers, and that Indra has personally killed them, because Indra is actually just he's become mad. It's very often the case when someone. It's described in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is Bhoktaram Yagitapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. He's the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the well-wisher. Now, we're in the material world with the conception that we are God. We want to be the enjoyer. We want to be the controller. We want to be the well-wisher. And so we can, using our intelligence, we can see, okay, actually, I'm trying so hard to enjoy, and I'm not enjoying. Therefore, can I really be the supreme enjoyer? Can I really be? We can use our intelligence and come to the conclusion, okay, perhaps I'm not the supreme enjoyer. And similarly, we can see there's so many things happening in this world which are outside of our control. Basically, everything happening in this world is outside of our control. We cannot even control how our own body functions. We cannot control. We're just completely governed in so many ways by these material modes. So we can come to the conclusion, okay, I'm not the supreme controller or proprietor. Bhaktaram Yagatapasam, that one's out the window. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, that one's also out the window. But Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, that I'm the well-wisher. Because this is the mentality of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme well-wisher of every single living entity. Anything that happens to us is by his mercy for our spiritual advancement. But this mentality is much, much harder to give up than the other two, because you can see so many people, they still have this mentality. I mean, especially I notice it myself, because we have some puffed up mentality that, we have the ability to help people. We think we're the well-wisher. And you see this so often amongst different personalities. And so here Diti is also exemplifying this psychological trait. She thinks that actually I know what's best for Indra. Now what Diti is really doing is she's actually trying to sort of cover her traces. She's very much you can say even intoxicated by the material concept of life. Her relationship to her sons, and her sons were fairly horrific personalities. Like when you hear about what Hiranyakashipu was up to, it's like, can you really be that attached to your son? But because she's so much encumbered by the material concept of life, that she then it fundamentally changes her vision, and therefore she sees Indra as a source of her suffering, and she wants to somehow help him. It's like similar. You hear stories of, Giriraj Maharaj? He joined the movement, and his parents are very, very worried. Are they worried out of their concern for his well-being and his safety, or are they worried about, his parents were very rich, a lot of social prestige, etc. So are they worried about what everyone else is looking at them? Are they worried about their inheritance? Are they worried about who's going to take over the business? And therefore, it's all no. My dear son, my dear Giriraj, I don't imagine they called him Giriraj, Prabhu, or whatever his name was. You're suffering from some mental health condition. This must be what it is. You must not be well. So we're your well-wishers. So let us send you to this psychologist. Yeah. And so they put Giriraj Maharaj in. I think I've heard different stories. We put him with a psychologist, and he just talks from the Bhagavad Gita for like an hour, and he comes out and the psychologist says, "Yeah, he's completely healthy." And there's another. I think there's a different pastime one devotee. Also, the parents sort of force him to go to the psychologist, and in the end, he says, "The son is healthy, but the parents, I want to speak to you." But we can see this so often. What we do is that we try and pretend we're doing the good thing, and use this as an excuse to actually fulfill our material desires. And Diti is a perfect example of this. Indra considers his body eternal, and thus he's become unrestrained. I therefore wish to have a son who can remove Indra's madness. Let me adopt some means to help me in this. So very much she's seeing herself as a controller. She's seeing this as, okay, the situation is out of control, so I'm just going to produce this son who's going to magically rectify everything. So ultimately, what Bhagavatam does is it changes our vision. Shastra Chakshus, we have to see through the eye of scripture. And our vision is according to our adhikar, our qualification. Krishna allows us to see what we're qualified to see. So of course, we understand that there's, our qualification can be a whole range, but there's three primary qualifications. There's the Kanishta Adhikari, the Majjhima Adhikari, or Nyuttama Adhikari. So I thought today I would just speak a little on the symptoms of a Kanishta Adhikari and the means by which we can come to a higher platform and therefore change our vision. There's a very, very, very long and very nice detailed purport in the 11th canto by disciples of Srila Prabhupada, where it's discussing the symptoms of a Kanishta Adhikari. So I've made some brief notes from there, and yeah, I'll share, and then we can discuss. Yeah, so Nishta means fixed. It's very interesting, actually. We see in even in English, if we think of words beginning with ST, anyone can name a word beginning with ST? Stay. Stand. Stink. Stutter. Steady. Okay. These are ones coming to but a lot of the words we have, like stand, stay, steady, sturdy, stop, they refer to like being sort of, fixed. So nishta, they come from the same root. Shishikudnitai, apushashiki. So the kanishta is one who's is unsteady, and therefore they can only engage in the external form of the Sankirtan movement. This Sankirtan movement is about developing pure love for Godhead, but one who's still on the Kanishta platform, they engage with the external structure. They do not so much penetrate into the inner depths of what this movement's about. So therefore, we can judge the success. If you're on this platform, then you primarily judge the success of the movement by, perhaps how many people are coming to a program, how big is the temple, how much Lakshmi was collected, etc. Without seeing the mood of what's involved in the service itself. So therefore, we're somewhat, this process of qualification. It's Krishna protecting the beauty of his Sankirtan movement and his devotional service. He doesn't allow. Well, I guess it's even more than that. It's Srimati Radharani. She's the one who bestows bhakti. She's Bhakti Devi herself, and she doesn't bestow devotional service to those who are not qualified for it. It's like, I remember, this is Manglananda Prabhu. He would speak like this. He says, like, Srimati Radharani, she's like the almost like the bouncer for this party. So the party is going on in the spiritual world. Everyone is just, completely 100% there simply to give pleasure to Krishna. And so she's seen who's coming and she's thinking, is this person, are they simply wanting to give pleasure to Krishna? And if that's all they want, then she lets them in. But if she sees that they've got some other desires, then they're just going to make a mess of the whole situation. They're not going to fit in here. Therefore, she keeps them out. But she's very merciful as well. So we're very lucky that we know some people on the inside. So we also got this to help us. Prabhupada's got the backdoor key. So it's like this. You can. They're primarily somewhat fixated upon the externals of the Sankirtan movement, and they also they think themselves more advanced than they perhaps are. It's described that they only see the deity within the temple and cannot worship. They cannot see Krishna outside of the temple, or they cannot appreciate the devotees properly. So they think themselves somewhat advanced. It's important to note, the reason I'm discussing this right now is because a lot of these symptoms, or most of these symptoms, I identify with myself, and by identifying them, we sort of become more aware of them and can help purify ourselves. So I speak this for my own purification. So primarily they identify with the deity within the temple and become restricted by this. therefore they cannot properly understand devotees who are more advanced. Devotees who are more advanced, they know that their only source of enjoyment comes from this process of Krishna consciousness, whereas a Kanishta Adhikari, they get some enjoyment from the process of devotional service, but they're hedging their bets. They see they can also get some enjoyment from outside of this movement. Therefore, their religious life, you could say, is something they do part time. Even they may be somewhat like officially looking like a devotee, etc. But if you're somehow also engaging in other sources of enjoyment outside of devotional service, then it's a sign that they're not fully convinced that Krishna is actually the source of all pleasure. And because this is their mentality, then they misunderstand more advanced devotees. This is all described in this purport in the 11th canto, the second chapter. And it's described more advanced devotees will oftentimes actually criticize non-devotees simply for their benefit. But because the Kanishta Adhikari, his vision is somewhat distorted, and he's also seeking for enjoyment outside of this movement, he becomes somewhat fixated upon mundane morality of what's good, what is bad, without seeing the transcendental dimension. And therefore, he sees when more advanced devotees start to criticize non-devotees, they get very upset. It's very interesting. It's all described. It's quoting from the Acharyas. Premalikas are searching for happiness outside of Krishna consciousness. And then Jiva Goswami, he says that if the devotee cannot even appreciate the other devotees, then there's absolutely no option that he's going to be able to appreciate the non-devotees. Because the devotees, they have Krishna in their hearts, and nothing's more attractive than Krishna. Therefore, the devotees themselves are very, very attractive. And if one cannot appreciate the devotees, then how is he going to appreciate a non-devotee? He's going to be appreciating purely on material consciousness, on the body, etc., which is temporary. Therefore, this is Jiva Goswami. He says that they cannot preach. They can engage in the activities of preaching, but what's actually happening is not preaching, because like we talked at the start, they are not the supreme well-wisher. They're simply trying to facilitate their own desires, etc. So this can all seem a little bit somewhat depressing. The final point of the symptoms of Kanishta Adhikari is that their activities are primarily or they're influenced by jnana and karma. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives one I find quite scary example or explanation of what it means when jnana and karma are influencing our devotional activities. When we're motivated by desires for some sort of merging with the Supreme or some fruitive material reward, then he says it's like worms. So someone they can be eating so much food, but if they have these desires for jnana and karma, then although they're eating so much food, they're not getting any nourishment, and they're still very, very skinny, because the worms, the parasites, are actually what's taking all the nutrients. And so similarly, if we do not develop Anya Balasita Sunyam, this proper devotion for Krishna's pleasure, then although we may be engaged in so many activities of bhakti, we can see some people may have, throughout the history of ISKCON, people have exalted managerial abilities, or they can distribute so many books, etc. But unless they actually develop the right mood, then all these activities, they don't fully nourish them. Yeah, it's like worms. Krishna doesn't accept. We were hearing just yesterday, Daksha Prabhu was saying, Krishna, he refused, there's one pastime, he refused a meal at the house of Duryodhana, and then went to this Devaka, the wife of Vidura, who was just so ecstatic to see Krishna. She was just she was feeding him banana peels. There was banana, and she was taking the banana out. She was so confused, taking the banana out, leaving it aside, and giving him banana peels. And Krishna was just accepting them, because there's so much bhakti there. Whereas if we have, these other desires, then Krishna, he's not so keen to accept. So this all may be a little bit depressing when we hear about these symptoms of the Kanishta Adhikari, and then personally I'm reading this and I'm going, okay, this is quite worrying, because I identify with many of these. And when we identify with this, then our path, Kanishta means unsteady. We're not on stable ground. We're much more prone to make offenses. And if we make offenses, this is when you get kicked out of the process of devotional service. Again, Adokshapur gives one analogy that we have to very quickly come off this Kanishta platform. He says it's like the turtles, they give birth. There's a certain distance from the sea, they have to give birth, they lay their eggs, and then they leave their eggs there to hatch. And the eggs hatch, and then the little turtles on their own, they have to run to the sea. You've already seen the videos, it's quite emotional. And these gulls, etc., they know exactly when these turtles are going to hatch, and they're all swooping up ahead. And so these little turtles, as soon as they hatch, then they start to get crawling towards the sea. And the turtles, they lay many eggs, and not many of these turtles actually make it all the way to the sea. These big birds come down, it's quite disgusting, they flip them onto the back. And again, it's a little bit scary, this analogy, but he says it's like this, that we have to very quickly come to a deeper platform of understanding. Because once we come to the Madhyama platform, we come to Nishta, etc., we come free from a lot of the anarthas within our heart, then we're somewhat safe. We're not perfectly safe, but we're somewhat safe. Whereas, it'd be interesting to do some statistical analysis of the dropout rates from devotees, depending on what what adhikar they reach. But I'm not sure this is. We only read this and hear this for ourselves. We're not here to judge. We don't know where other people are. We simply, I speak just now for my own purification. So there's a dire need to come to a higher platform quite quickly. So again, this purport in the 11th canto, it gives three means for hope. The first is that by having faith in Shastra, and by regularly study of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, this can elevate us quickly. It doesn't give much more detail than that. It just says have faith in Shastra. And again, I guess we hear this is the 5 most potent forms of devotional service. Then regular study of the Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very potent. But also says that deity worship is of paramount importance, because the Kanishta Adhikari, they can only see Krishna within the temple. They cannot see Krishna within every living entity. They cannot see Krishna as, how everything is an expansion of his energy. But Krishna is very, very merciful. This process of deity worship is not ordinary. And so actually, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he describes that there's 5 expansions of Krishna that the living entity can experience. So first is Para, which is Swayam Bhagavan Krishna himself. Then Krishna expands as Chaturvyuha, the quadruple expansion, Pradyumna, Sankarsam, Aniruddha and Vasudev. Then again, Krishna expands as Vaibhav, sort of pastime, Leela incarnations, like Lord Varaha, Lord Nrsimha, I'm not sure he is actually, Lord Ramachandra, etc. Then again, Krishna expands as Antaryami, the super soul. So again, we can have interactions with all these different expansions of Krishna, and then finally Krishna expands as Archa, Archa Vigraha, the deity form. But I was reading this, I found it very, very interesting. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he writes that, just as we see within the material elements, like earth contains, I forget the details, earth contains all the other aspects of fire, water, ether, etc. So similarly, the deity form contains all these other forms within it, because the deity is non-different from the supersoul, and then the supersoul is expanding from past time incarnation. So it goes like this. Therefore, by regularly worshipping the deity, we become able to see these other aspects of the Lord in their rightful place. Therefore, by regularly engaging in deity worship, you begin to see Krishna in his all-pervasive feature. You begin to see Krishna as the supersoul in every single living being. You begin to see how everything is related to him. So deity worship is very, very profound and important, and Prabhupada stressed it very much. We don't need to think that we need to be offering arti to be engaged in deity worship. Very much, we've got Gaurnitai deities here, and the way to worship Gaurnitai is simply kirtan. And it's my personal opinion, but not just any kirtan. It needs to be excited sometimes. Gaurnitai, they need to dance. Yeah, and this is a very high form of deity worship, and by regularly engaging in this, then we get the higher vision. We develop a higher qualification to understand more about Krishna. And the final, there's 3 points of hope. So first is faith in Shastra, then deity worship, and finally preaching, prachar. And this is very, very uplifting, because as soon as we come in contact with ISKCON, with Prabhupada's movement, pretty soon we get engaged in some sort of preaching activity, because this movement is a Sankirtan movement. Therefore, if you can see there's some temple, etc., which is healthy, some yatra which is healthy, it's because everything is directed towards Sankirtan. Of course, so many other activities happen. There's deity worship, cooking, cleaning, etc. But the primary focus of the whole movement is Sankirtan. But particularly when we engage actively in some sort of Sankirtan, then in some sort of preaching, Krishna, he elevates us, at least for the time being. Because as we described earlier, the Jiva Goswami is writing that one who has no appreciation for the devotees can certainly have no appreciation for the non-devotees. Therefore, they cannot actually engage in preaching. They can engage in the activities of preaching, but it's not really preaching. Therefore, if we have a desire to properly engage in preaching and to somehow sharing this mercy, then Krishna is very, very merciful. He sees, well, if this person, if they want to actually engage in preaching, then at least for the time being, whilst they're engaged in that preaching activity, they need to come to a higher platform that they can actually act at a position of compassion, and that they can actually differentiate between who's the devotee, who's the non-devotee, who's envious, etc. So you engage in some preaching activity like book distribution or something for some time, then it's like you temporarily, if you're sincere in your endeavor, you temporarily get raised to a higher platform. What can happen? You go up for a little while and you come back down. Then you sink back down and you go to your normal. I know myself, to go back to my tamasic state. But then the secret is, why stop? We get a special mercy. We engage in preaching. We get a special mercy to get raised to a higher platform. And so you see the exalted devotees, they don't stop preaching. The preaching takes different forms. It's not that you have to be giving out books constantly. Like there's more to devotional service, and there's more to preaching than just the direct transaction of Lakshmi and books. But the mentality that we're always trying to give Krishna, we're always trying to engage other living entities in devotional service. This is what Sankirtan means. This is the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, that they're always trying to engage other living entities in the service of Krishna. And they actually get more pleasure when they engage other living entities in their service. Srimati Radharani, she's saying, my dear gopis, you serve Krishna. And they're saying, no, you serve. Because these actually get more pleasure from facilitating the service of some other living entity. And they know that Krishna, he's Akila Rasamrita Murti. He's the reservoir of all pleasure. He has a unique relationship, a unique rasa with every single living entity. Therefore, every single living entity, they have something unique which only they can offer Krishna. They can give Krishna a type of pleasure that only they are capable of doing. So it's this is the mood of Sankirtan. It's just engaging other people in the service. Prabhupada would talk about the beautiful garlands here. There's many different types of beautiful flowers. Perhaps the yellow roses, but the whole garland was yellow roses. It's not so exciting. You know, it needs to have this mix, different smells, etc. This is how to cook. So the secret is, Prabhupada gave. This is when you actually understand more about the Shastra. There's everything Prabhupada's given, this whole sort of structure of ISKCON and the morning program and our service, etc. is to make us serious devotees, to bring us back to Krishna this lifetime. So he was very strict. We have to engage in both the process of Harinam Sankirtan, but also in deity worship, and also in regularly studying the Shastra, and then we'll be elevated from this Kanishta platform and we'll become more safe. So Jaya, I'll humbly stop here. If there's any questions or comments. Yeah, I found it really striking because it said exactly this sentence in the this purport. Maybe I can send it to you. It's a really, really nice purport. But one of the symptoms of a Kanishta Adhikari is that they're searching for their happiness outside of Krishna consciousness. They're not fully saturated in Krishna consciousness, so then naturally it disturbs their intelligence, etc. And it's a really long purport in the 11th canto when there's the verse describing the symptoms of a Kanishta Adhikari. It's like the second chapter, and then she's got loads of references from the acharyas. It's really nice. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes, Nishta means fixed, like steady. But it's similar in English. We have some of the same. Nishta is like a steadiness. So sometimes we're very actively engaged, but other times we're not so actively engaged. So we feel very fired up to do this particular service at this particular time, and then this time, no. Yeah, because very much it's not clear cut. The movement is very much changed, dynamic. We're trying to be more encompassing, different. But Prabhupada, in the way he set up this movement, is very clear. And then again, there's so many references. Prabhupada is very clear. The three things are deity worship, Shastra, and preaching. And this is the way we elevate ourselves. So we just have to somehow try and engage people in worshipping as a deity, engage people in studying Prabhupada's books, and engage people primarily in preaching.
So engaging is one thing, engaging the spirit of devotion is the essence. So that's, I guess that's the job of those who are in that spirit to try to engage in that way. But at the same time, though, if you're trying to engage people in the spirit of devotion and they're not inclined, then you only have limited time.
Yeah.
So Srila Prabhupada, somebody brought a visitor to him, and the person wasn't really asking any questions, but kind of more challenging for him. Why do you bring these people to me? So it's not Prabhupada just saying waste his time with those sorts of people.
Yeah. I was from my university, which is now thankfully finished. I was having to. I was doing some research into some other. I think it might have been slightly. I probably shouldn't have been looking so much at it, but I could sort of class it as necessary for my course. And also very interesting to ISKCON, looking at other sort of new religious movements, the successful ones, like Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, etc. Yeah, one of this scholar, he was outlining some of the key reasons for success of the Jehovah's Witnesses is having. They do have quite strict standards about what they do actually. Most movements, if they're trying to say, "Oh, we've got this many members," like if one Yatra says, "How many members do you have?" Well, they say, "Oh, we've got so many thousands come to Janmashtami, so many here," so that they'll sort of try and make it a bigger number. But they're very, very strict. They say to actually be what they call a publisher. It means you have to be engaged in minimum 4 hours Sankirtan per week. They don't call it Sankirtan, but distributing books. You have to be reading. You have to be reading every single day. You have to be. You cannot be drinking any alcohol. There's quite a high sort of guideline, and therefore it's very clear who's actually the ones who are properly engaged in the movement. And so they have a lot of people coming in. They also have quite a lot of people going out as well. But because the core people are very, very strong and are clearly identified, then this sort of gradually is growing quite substantially. And this is identified as the reason for the success of that movement. Whereas if things are too sort of wishy-washy, a little bit vague what it means to actually be, then perhaps this will allow people more room to facilitate their own desires, but still think that they're engaged in the movement. Okay. I'll stop here. It's getting time for breakfast. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All of you ki.